thing is that in most of our cultures who are represented here, there is an axiom that we are taught from a very early age, at least my generation was, and I imagine the one after me was, and I know the one before me was, and that is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Have you heard of that? And this is something they teach us so that we are oriented in our thinking against the desire for power, the lust for power. And so it is that one end of the paradox is this, that power is bad for you. And on the other hand, we also will find ourselves saying from time to time, when we are in very trying situations, when all else fails, the human being will turn to God and say, give me strength, give me power. And so on the one hand we need it, and on the other hand we are taught that it is bad for us. So we probably have, consciously or unconsciously, a little bit of an ambivalent relationship with the concept of power. And I bring this up right at the very beginning because I think it's important to realize that this context of an ambivalent attitude towards power is a hurdle for us in the cultivation and development of the powers through yoga. Now, what I would like to have you do with your little circles with your face inside them is to draw a vertical line, an inch above and an inch below, and then a horizontal line an inch to the right and an inch to the left, with your face in the middle always, and then the a diagonal equivalent, so that you get something like the British flag, top is 4 division into 8. And then I would like you to write the names of the powers that we consider in RAJYOGA, starting at 1:30, top and right one, write tolerance. And the next one, 3 o'clock, you can write accommodation. And at 4:30 you can write discrimination/discernment. And at 6 o'clock you can write judgment/good decision-making power, something like that. And then at 7:30 you can write facing. And at 9 o'clock you can write cooperation. 7:30 is facing, F-A-C-I-N-G. And then cooperation, and the next one is packing up at 10:30, and at midnight or midday, whichever you prefer, we have withdrawal. First 3 again, I'll just go over the whole list. First is tolerance, second is accommodation, third is discernment, discrimination, fourth is judgment, And then on the other side we have facing, and then cooperation, and backing up, and withdrawal. Now you, the little face in the middle of the little paper, you are standing on the edge of a razor blade, but you can't see that, you just have to know that. You're standing on the edge of a razor blade, and these long sticks that you have, these are your balancing rods, and the razor blade is life, and you need these balancing rods so that you can walk along that straight and narrow path and reach your destination with the empowerment to be able to handle the different things that you will encounter along the rocky road of your razor blade path, from when you arrived in this body until when you go out from it. And then you need them still for your next many, many bodies. But this is the very good time within the cycle of eternity for the human being to acquire these balancing rods, these powers. And so the thing of Raj Yoga, the very, very practical, very important reason why we learn Raj Yoga, very much in the context of knowing ourselves as a soul, is because we want to claim these capabilities which are going to be helpful for us now and in the future for a very, very long time. Because the thing is that right now, why it's a very good time to learn these things is because more or less for everybody there is a greater or lesser state of adversity. And the general state of adversity is a very good one for acquiring powers. You don't generally tend to become powerful in conditions of peace and happiness and everything being fine. But when the going gets tough, the tough get going, you know that one, don't you? And so here you must be tough because you couldn't otherwise get to the top of this mountain on the other side of this planet. So definitely you have that for you. And so these powers are all about how can we live in this world with our own weaknesses, handicaps, with our limited understanding, with our strange and wonderful experiences of life, which have shaped us or distorted us, which have carved deep channels in our souls, and which have subjected us to many things that we did not necessarily expect would happen to us. And we are not alone in that, but we are living with others who also have that. And we do not know very well how to be, or who to be, or what to be. We receive many messages from our environment, from our education, from the media, from our significant people in our lives. And many of these messages are difficult to understand. They are very often very contradictory. We encounter hypocrisy, injustice, meanness, deception, violence, and so on and so on. I don't need to give you the chronicle, you know very well. But life is not very easy, and you very often will be taught that, oh well, when you grow up it will all be very easy, and when you grow up you find it's more difficult than it was before, and then you say, well, why didn't they tell us, and things like that. So basically you can see that we need a lot of internal power, and I want to just put this as a reason why we need power, which came from the early morning murli that some of you had attended. And it was said that the reason why you need power is because it is very difficult to live in the context of other people in relationships without becoming enmeshed, without being in bondage. And so why we need power is to be able to live in the midst of all of this and still be free. When we are in bondage, when we are enmeshed, it means that how we feel and how we think and what we do and how we interpret things is tremendously shaped by the influences around us that affect us. And so another analogy that you will hear in Raj Yoga quite a bit is this symbol of the lotus. And the lotus is a very ancient symbol. And very simply, it means that a yogi is somebody who lives in the water, which is dirty, and with many, many connections. The lotus flower has a big, complicated root system, but you can't see that because it's under the water, which is so dirty you can't see through it. And the lotus is very beautiful and is untouched by whatever is the context in which it lives. And so we have to have a lot of powers to be able to walk that razor blade and live in that quagmire of many, many negative situations and things which do not naturally give you a feeling of well-being and pleasure. And at the same time to be happy, which is why I asked you to make a smile in that little face in the circle. So now these words, tolerance and accommodation and discernment and all of this, these words are known. You know what they mean and you have a relationship with them already, no doubt. But what I would like to share with you is this, that I've been in this practice of Raj Yoga for going on about 18 years, and it's taken me all this time to, and I'm sure I don't have it quite right yet, but to really figure out what these words really mean in terms of an actual practical possession, you know. And I think that it might be quite helpful for you to give yourselves the permission to just sit with those words and let them be just words, and know that they are labels on a very big box that contains extraordinary things which will become yours slowly over time. Power is not something that you can get by studying. You can read about it, you can think about it, you can figure out what would be the signs of somebody who has those powers, but that's not the same as actually acquiring them. One analogy that I heard fairly recently was that in war, it doesn't matter how well you train, you never can be prepared for war. And when you go onto the battlefield, you have no idea what is going on. It's a complete chaos, and very few of the rules and regulations that you learn during your training actually apply. So I don't know if any of you have any kind of soldierly experience, but an analogy for life, along with being the stagnant water pond and the razor blades, the battlefield. And you can consider yourselves also as the warriors, and you are not in the battlefield just to get rid of whoever else is around. But the battlefield of life is a battlefield in which your enemies are completely invisible, completely intangible, and the other people around on the battlefield sometimes appear to be your enemies, but they never are. And one who is developing their powers and developing themselves as a yogi needs to sit with that idea for quite a while also, to really realize that, to use one expression from Brother Charlie that I liked very much, everyone is blameless. It's very, very important to really know that it might look like someone is being awful and doing dreadful things on the battlefield, and we have natural instincts to go in there with all our guns and tanks and head off all the people who are doing things that we don't think are right. But when we get into more depth of a spiritual practice, we realize that to go for the appearance that the people on the battlefield are our enemies is to perpetuate a circumstance of human life where you're living in a context of conflict. And so we have to realize that our aim and purpose of a spiritual practice is so that we can live in the world of people, in human society, in the environment that the planet Earth provides, in harmony and in happiness and in peace. And one very, very key element in actually bringing this about is to really convince oneself at a very deep level that there is no human being who is my enemy. But it is the case that all human beings are very influenced by many negative things, and that due to this, it is very easy for us to get very caught up in this illusion that we are bad for one another. So one of the aims and purposes of acquiring these powers, why we need these powers, is because it is really lack of spiritual power that has corrupted us, and a complete absence of spiritual power that has made us so strongly affected that we are driven by these sensitivities, and we are forced by circumstances into doing things and feeling things that if we were truly detached and if we were truly in our spirituality, we wouldn't go for. And so one very important thing that we have to come to terms with is that we have been very much disempowered, and this disempowerment is part of our culture, and we need to give ourselves quite a lot of time, quite a lot of thinking time, quite a lot of experimenting time to pinpoint and articulate and identify just exactly how much and in which areas we are driven by these cultural influences and our emotions and sensitivities and ideas that we have adopted that we think are right because they correspond to our heart, but which on further exploration we find we need to discard because these ideas have actually been instrumental to perpetuate our bondage. And so it is that we wish to be free, and we wish to be free so deeply and so powerfully that we are not going to pay the wrong prices that are going to put us further into debt. We wish to be free in such a way that the appearance of freedom is not mixed up with the reality of freedom. And so you begin to see where these powers come in. This power of discernment and discrimination is a very, very important one, because it is by developing this power of discernment that we become able to see which ideas that are motivating forces in our lives are truly going to bring us to a state of freedom, and which ideas have we adopted without being truly aware of the implications of adopting those ideas. And so if we are thinking that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, then we have to identify that what type of power does that. And we will find that that is not really power that does that. That is vices that do that. Now, vices and power are not the same thing. But what has happened is that we have absorbed many ideas that are bandied around without really taking the time to dissect them and analyze them and see that we have been somewhat hypnotized into thinking things which we haven't thought about. And this is a bondage. It's a very strong bondage that takes away our freedom. And so we need to develop our power of discernment so that we can take a look at what is the foundation in the level of ideas, the foundation of our lives. What are the principles on which I operate as a human being? And this is why when you come here and you learn about knowledge of the soul, knowledge of the Supreme Soul, knowledge of karma. So the reason why we study these things, which are very fundamental principles, is so that we are stimulated to re-evaluate the ideas on which our life is based. And what we are using in this process is this thing which we call the power of discrimination, the power of discernment. We do not like to be deceived. As a species, we do not like to be deceived. And we need to use our power of discrimination and discernment with one another so that we are training our eye, our discerning, discriminating eye, to be able to distinguish in the people around us what is real and what isn't real. And you may often have found yourself using this expression about someone that, oh, they're not being real. Have you used that? And so it's like this, that it's a little bit more easy for us to see that if somebody is not being real. But while somebody is not being real, have we developed the eye to be able to see that if they were being real, what would that be like? Because if they cannot see their own realness, but why cannot I see their realness? Since I am learning about the soul, and I'm learning about the original qualities of the soul, why am I learning this? Not just a nice idea, I am very spiritual, I know about the soul. No. Why we learn about this is because it's very necessary, basic information for us to learn to discern the real elements of another human being. Because if I am relating to another human being on the base of aspects of themselves that are unreal, and which I know are unreal, and still I relate to them on that basis, then it means I'm not very bright. And it's not going to work out very well for me if I am deliberately being unintelligent. But you see how we are in bondage of being unintelligent in spite of ourselves. We know someone's not being real, we focus totally on their unreal aspects, and we relate to them on that level. Doesn't make sense. Why do we do it? Because we haven't the power to actually put our understanding into effect. And also because the habit, very, very strong habit of doing things the other way is very deeply ingrained into us, and we are not using our power of discernment to distinguish that this is going on. And so it's necessary for us to study so that we can hear about these things, think about these things, and try to see in what ways these things are actually operating inside me, so that I can understand that, yes, I must acquire this power of discernment so that I can actually be discerning in how I operate, and discern what is the right way to go, what is the right thing to look at, and really train my eye, you see. Now this power of discernment is very closely related with the power of judgment. And again, the word judgment is one of those buzzwords, one of those words that has a load on it. And so we need to again use our power of discernment and discrimination to see that there is a very big difference between being judgmental and having good judgment. Very big difference. But yet we are lazy with our use of the language, not just English, but same thing happens in any language, that we use it in a very fuzzy way, so that we don't pay attention to the meanings of the words that we use, and then our capabilities of intelligence get dull, and then instead of making good judgment, we become judgmental, and then we think we have very good judgment. But what we have really done is we have developed the unpower of being supercritical. And it's an unpower, even though it's very powerful in the sense of very aggressive. But it's actually an unpower, because it doesn't really help. It creates animosity. It makes you believe that whoever it is who's doing something wrong or being something wrong is wrong. And you don't notice that being critical is wrong, more wrong, you see. And so therefore it's necessary for us to really develop this power of judgment so that we can discern and judge what exactly it is that we are doing. Otherwise we make a misjudgment of ourselves, we make a misjudgment of people, and we start fighting people instead of fighting ignorance, instead of fighting illusion, instead of fighting the things that are in our own selves that need to be worked with. And we start to get into a relationship of bondage with other people due to using these unpowers in the name of power. You see, because when you are thinking about another person that they are wrong, and many of us do this several times a day, think such and such a person is wrong, you think this activity that they are doing is wrong. When you are thinking like that, there is very often an emotion that is also going on. And what this emotion does is it will make you think that thing a few times. You think like 4 or 5 times. And then after another 5-10 minutes you will think again 6-7 times. And after half an hour you will have been thinking about 85-90 times that this person is wrong, and you will have created this monster in your mind's eye of this person and what they might do, which of course they might also not do. And you imagine all of these things about this person, and then you start having feelings about what they might do, and then you start to experience that they actually did do it, even though it was just a might do. But you are having such feelings that probably they will do this, and most likely they will do that, and I mean, we have to be very careful about this. And so then you position yourself and you get yourself all wound up about this person on the basis of nothing, just an idea. And what you have succeeded in is creating a karmic account with them. And they had nothing to do with it. But they are in bondage because you thought about them that much. And you are also in bondage because you thought about that much. You see, that is a karmic bondage. And very easily this karmic bondage that is created by thinking about a person in that way will find its way out of your mouth. And you will say to some other person that, oh, I don't know about this person, you know, I mean, we have to be very careful about them. And then you create in the mind of the other person negative feeling towards that first one. And then they start having a karmic bondage with them too. And the other person didn't do anything. They just were having breakfast, you know, nothing at all. And then you start to think about what you're going to do to them, you know, because in case they might do it to you first, so you better get in there quick and do something. And in that way, eventually, we become horrible to each other unnecessarily and for free, you see. And like this, this is the context in which we live. These are the vibrations in the air, you see, because whatever is the thought that you think, it's creating an atmosphere. And an atmosphere is the sphere of energy around you that is created by your thoughts. And it can be quite big. And when everybody is having a lot of negative thoughts, then the atmosphere is very bad, and it's extremely influential, you know. For example, the panic is very contagious. If you are in a cinema and the cinema catches fire, you try being peaceful. Very difficult. Everybody's all over the place. It's a very contagious panic. And all the other negative emotions are also very contagious. And we do not see those things, and we do not observe how they are influencing us necessarily unless we have a very refined power of discernment, and then we become open to being negatively affected, and we say, oh, it wasn't my fault. But you heard Sister Jayenti mentioning this in the talk on karma, that we are responsible for everything that happens to us, including taking in the atmosphere of negative thought that we might inadvertently walk into. You see? And so we need these powers to be able to keep ourselves on that straight and narrow razor blade, keeping these little poles in our hand to have balance, so that we are always going to maintain our deep sense of who we are and be true to ourselves, you know. Because it isn't really necessary that if I am a peaceful soul and you come along in a state of anger, for me to throw away my peace instantaneously and engage in a battle with you just because your anger is more powerful than my peace. I have to turn that around. And for this we need a thing called the power of accommodation. And power of accommodation is a very interesting power that takes sometimes a long time to figure out that what is this accommodation. And accommodation is to really grow and expand your heart to such an extent that you have that feeling towards other people that let them be exactly who they are and what they are, and let me not try to change them. And this is a form of generosity. Let me accept you exactly as you are, because you are who you are. And the more you learn about spiritual principles, the more you know that every human being is unique. Every human being has their own part in this drama, and there is no change possible. But we human beings, when we see what's wrong with someone or another, we are always trying to change them and make them better, because we seem to know better than them what would be better for them to be. And of course we know, if we are thinking clearly, that that doesn't make sense. But yet it's a very strong instinct within many of us, you know. And we think that, oh, we will work on this person and we will make them better and we will get rid of their faults and so on and so forth. And again we, you know, this finger pointing thing with one pointing towards somebody and three fingers pointing back towards the self. You know that one. And we have to use that. And in this power of accommodation, we will just open up ourselves to others and know that they are exactly who they are, and everyone is mixed, good and bad. Various components are there to make up every person, and it is impossible for us to know another person at great depth immediately. It takes years, maybe 50, 60 years to know another person really deeply, you know? And so who are we to think that somebody is not who they're supposed to be? So the power of accommodation allows you to accept a person as who they are, and it gives you the possibility to understand them, you know, over time, with acceptance, with generosity. And you can take the whole person, their goodness and their not so goodness, and all of that is who they are, and you love them because that's your brother, you see. And there is a song, you know, the road is long, I'll carry him because he's my brother, something like that. It's an old song, the older ones here will know. And the power of accommodation is like that, to be able to carry everyone in your heart and really noticing what their essential pure qualities are, using your power of discernment, and then accept them exactly as they are, using your power of accommodation. And this is not just only for other people, but one of the things that we need great power for is to accept ourselves as who we are, because lo and behold, we too are mixed good and bad, like everybody else. And for this you need the power to face. Year before last, this was my favorite power. Last year was power of tolerance, my favorite power. Year before last, the power to face. It was like, for me, if you can face anything and everything, then you got it, you made. You've got to be able to face. And the first one you have to face is face yourself. And we have many illusions about ourselves, and these illusions come from a thing which in Raj Yoga we call ego. It's a very difficult vice to come to terms with or figure out what it is exactly. And I suppose ego is when you oscillate between thinking too highly of yourself or not highly enough, And it happens like that. Some days we think I'm absolutely, just so useless and not good, and don't know whether I'll make it, and maybe I should just go and hide in a hole somewhere. And on other days, I say, no, I am absolutely wonderful, fantastic, incredible, and everybody should pay attention to what I say and all of that. And then the next day, no, that was a very bad idea, and embarrassing, and very rarely do we hit that, that in-between middle place where we are actually in touch with the reality of ourselves. And so we have to come to terms with this oscillating that we do, and really look at ourselves as what we are. And it takes time to get to that point, but it's nevertheless important to always keep this as an aim. And when we are caught out being bad or weak or stupid or dishonest or whatever, we have a natural tendency to rationalize it and try to make it go away, or make other people think that they didn't see it quite right and that they've got it wrong and that really we're just totally fine. It's very, very difficult for a person to face the reality that, yes, I lied. I'm sorry. Very difficult. And you might have remembered from one of Dadi Janki's classes yesterday, when she was answering the question on karma, this mention about repentance, that you have to really repent pretty heavily in order to stop repeating the negative karma. And this repentance comes after the facing. And facing is when you realize and you acknowledge that, yes, I am this, and yes, I did this, and I understand that it is not okay, and I am feeling the intensity of the gruesome pain of realizing that, and I will continue to feel that and let that burn inside of me, and then this thing won't happen again. This is a method, you see, and for this you need tolerance. Is it tolerance of the things that other people do to you is also very necessary, but you also need tolerance to tolerate the intense pain of recognition that, yes, I did wrong. And yes, this policy is not a good policy, and I apologize for keeping this. It was coming from a place of arrogance or whatever, and I will not do this anymore. I understand. This is painful, but it is very good, because through this we acquire some humility, and humility you can't get really too many other ways. And we need humility. It's very, very hard to get, and very valuable quality. So it's very linked with this tolerance. And what you get as you go through this type of thing is another quality that's very nice, which is compassion. Because you understand a little bit more about what's happening with other people, because it's not that you're the only one, but other people also are having to face themselves, and the changing takes place. And this compassion allows us to acquire this other quality, this other power, which is cooperation. You know, cooperation comes when the arrogance, the feeling of I'm either on top of someone or underneath someone has been worked through, and you know that we're all in this together, and that whatever it is that needs to be done, if we work together to do it, it's likely to get done. And we realize that while we are individuals, and while we are unique and different in thousands and thousands of ways, but that we function very effectively as an organism of many individuals, and the organism has great power when everyone is working together with this power of cooperation. Because even, it is said, even God cannot create the world by himself. He can, but he doesn't. But if God says, no, I can't do this thing without you, then how can we say to one another that, no, we can't do this without all of us? And the power of cooperation also allows us to value the contribution of each one without judging that this one is good and this one is useless, and this one is high level and this one is middle level and this one is low level, because this is not our job. Our job is to see and discern everyone's qualities and figure out, how can I interact without becoming enmeshed with whoever it is that I am thrown together with according to circumstances and karma and so on, such that what we accomplish is something that is greater than any one of us. And as we work in that way, we find more and more that even one who seems to be, not so very skilled and not so very important, nevertheless, their contribution is like that one little screw in your piece of technical equipment, without which none of it would work, you see. And even one little screw is very little, but it's very essential, you see. And then as you move towards these powers at 10:30 and 12 o'clock, these are interesting powers. Pack up and go, Pack up and go is where, you see, to go means that you do what you have to do and you don't hang around for the applause. You do what you have to do and then you move on. Because if you are doing something, as Sister Genti mentioned yesterday, if you're doing something so that you will get a return, then that's not called service. You see, but very, very rarely do we face the reality of our motivations in this area, because when we are weak, which we all are, we do things to get what appears to be some kind of return which will make us feel better about ourselves. And this is another of those illusions for which we need to use our power of discernment and judgment to see that if I am doing this for the temporary return, then the profit I am going to get from doing this is very little. And what I need, being weak, is big profit and big credit. And so therefore it is much more wise for me to do what I have to do and go, and not take what is called as the temporary reward. I have to do what I have to do and go, so that what is happening with my karma is I'm just, taking time, however many years it takes, taking time to sit there and accumulate. I need capital, because there's many, many things that I have to face, and I need strength. And this strength is accumulated slowly over time by doing something good and then go. And Daddy Janki had mentioned to you that if you, instead of doing one sin, you do 100 good actions, then this is very good. So in order to make that a practical reality, we have to do the 100 good actions, and immediately after we've done those, withdraw. You see, just withdraw. And then this backing up is very interesting, to always know that this afternoon you might die. It's possible. And if you open up your equipment for doing something and then put it all away, then you're always ready. If you don't start another project until you've finished what you're doing, then you keep your area of operations always free, always clear, always tidy, so that you're always on top of what it is that is happening. Otherwise you get swamped. And it's very important to have a certain type of flexibility, so that always you are able to just put away whatever is going on. Even if it's a great big drama that is happening and all hell is breaking loose inside your head or inside your house or wherever, to be able to just pack it all up and apply a full stop to it and just become free. You see, this is a very, very important power. So as you can imagine, one can go on, developing these powers and thoughts about these powers for a long time, but I just wanted to share with you some thoughts about how they operate in a practical way, and how they are like balancing rods as you move through life. They will all help you to keep standing up and flex with many, many things that come to knock you off your stage, as we say. So I'd like to just stop at this point and see if any of you have any question for a few minutes, and then we can have some meditation together. Withdrawing means that the picture that is used for this to represent this power is a tortoise, and the tortoise will come out of his shell with his legs and hands and face and go and eat the grass and whatever he wants to do. And when he's finished, then he'll go back inside his shell. So withdrawing means that you do what you have to do, and then you go back. In a sense, the soul comes into action through your hands and eyes and ears and mouth, and when you've done it, you go back into the stage of Om Shanti. This is withdrawal. Yeah. Start behaving in that way. And it's also about, it's a very deep kind of love that you do not see a person's faults, but you see what is their potential. And then they will no longer function in the environment of their faults, because you are not validating that. You are always validating the hidden part, but that which is more real.
One of the most important things I've come across in RAJYOGA being a power. Over the past few months I've come across them. And we were given a sheet in Sydney to be able to off. And in very succinct language, qualified lines, the brilliance that these things are brought across. There are some of the most positive things possible, yet the words themselves can be taken hands. I have a little problem this morning in that I feel they have been feeding dead in a very negative background. This is just my problem, perhaps, that we started out looking at life, walking on the racing lane, stagnant on an atmosphere. Sometimes it can be, and I've been through many years where it was, but life's more complex than that. There are a lot of bright, beautiful things. And I would like to see perhaps if we can get hold of that little sheet, perhaps Charlie has it, distributed amongst the people here so that they've got something to take away that they can have. Whoever wrote it, might have been Charlie, I don't know. It was very good. Another point I wish that that's out of my mind is this business about the forgiveness of God and bathing oneself in the luxury of tears of repentance. There was a Merlin about a year ago. It was one of the most very important Merlin books. It was about the forgiveness of God.
The brother was saying, if I may paraphrase, that there are certain individuals who are in the history the great villains of our century, Hitler and Lenin, and can we also say that these are not our enemies? And I think that what Baba is teaching us to do is to see not that the person is bad, but the behavior is bad. The behavior is not the soul, and the soul, no matter how negative the behavior may be, there is a price to pay for that, which they will pay. Divine justice works whether or not you see it. And on the other hand, our power, what we can do is we can make sure that our own behavior is right. And when a person is behaving very badly, no matter what you do to imprison people and guillotine them and hang them and whatever, but they take rebirth right away and they carry on with the same sanskaras if you do that. But if you see the original qualities of the soul and keep your faith in the original purity of the human soul, then even these very incredible aberrations of humanity you can forgive. Because without that, as brother was mentioning, you have to forgive yourself, you have to forgive others, you have to make a space for others to forgive themselves, to say to recognize what they did that wasn't okay, and not do it anymore. And there will certainly be some tears as a person recognizes that. But you see, we are here to go totally beyond revenge and the perpetuation and escalation of human beings in humanity to each other. And so it is that when God is bringing his ways into our world, he doesn't do it in a beautiful world. He does it in a world where things have gone very tragically wrong. And this is the adversity within which we have to come to terms with things and acquire those powers and give the return of beautiful responses, rather than just perpetuate one bad thing for another, for another, for another. This eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth will make all of us toothless and eyeless, you know. When we came, myself and Sister Joan and Ruth, to Mount Abu, we stopped off in Bombay, and we went to the Muslim tomb of Haji Ali, and we went past the exhibition of prostheses and karmic accounts like you've never seen. And, you know, that's not happiness, that's not beauty. And then we come here and we study for beautiful things, and we see the contrast of what is being made and what is being let go of. And all the accumulated negative things that are there, we have to respond to these things in a totally new way, by going back to the origin, back to the essence of the soul, and say, forgive, forget, and let go, and let God, those type of things. So we're moving forward. See, we can't go back and say the sky should be destroyed, because you can't destroy anyone. It's a soul. Yeah, but people feel that. Many people feel that.